I heard the audible voice of God twice on May 24, 2002. And in this video, I will tell you why He used an audible voice to speak to me at that time. In this video, I will use the pronouns he and him in reference to God is power, and He resides in all of His creation. He is everywhere in the universe. Therefore, let us not try to say that God is existing somewhere. No, God is within all of His creation, and that means that He is within all of us. Now, be sure to stick around until the end of this video, where I will share with you, I will tell you what God said to me in an audible voice. Let's go. My name is June Lois. Welcome to the channel. The audible voice of God is not an emotion, an intuition, a feeling in your spirit. When the voice is inaudible, then we oftentimes question ourselves, as whether it is some part of self that is trying to have dialogue with us. So we will say, my mind tells me this, or I have a hunch, or I have a deep conviction. I know that I know that I know. Now, none of these, expressions describes the audible voice of God. The audible voice of God is a sound, a voice. It is verbal and will give an instruction or a warning. The audible voice of God is referred to many religious guides, including the Bible. References are made to many persons who have actually heard the audible voice of God. His voice was heard on special occasions. And in my experience, I am saying the occasions on which I heard God's audible voice, those occasions were special. In the Christian Bible, the King James Version, persons' experiences of God's audible voice are well documented. For example, Samuel, he heard the voice of God. He was young and he had no knowledge of God's voice, so it had to take the knowledge of Eli to explain to him that, listen, if that voice is heard another time, answer in this way. God spoke with Gideon on several occasions. Not that Gideon doubted God, but he said, okay, give me some proof. It's one thing to have faith in you and one thing to say, I'm hearing your voice, but I want proof, and I want the proof on my terms. So these are my terms. And his terms were fulfilled. Yes, his terms were fulfilled, and he felt very good in leading the Israelites. To hear the voice of God, in my opinion, is an exciting experience. It is very exciting in one's life. In St. John 10:27, the scripture said, my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. So to hear and recognize the voice of God is very good. It is important. The audible voice of God is personal. No two persons hear the same voice. I can't tell you how to listen. No, neither how to hear God's voice. You simply do not know when He will use His audible voice to communicate with you. And just like Samuel, we might not even know that it is God's voice. Or as with Gideon, who was so taken aback that God Himself was speaking to him. He heard God's voice. He kind of knew it was God who was speaking, but he wanted to be sure, so he asked for proof. Let us, when in doubt as to whose voice we are hearing, let us ask for proof so that we are sure that it is God's voice that we are hearing. The authenticity of the voice that we hear is very important. However, we're going to ask for the proof, or what we're going to ask for, I don't know. See, oftentimes we depend on the intuition of other persons to guide us. We are in doubt that God is speaking with us. We keep forgetting that God is within us and that He does communicate directly with us. Whether He chooses to use His audible voice or it's just an intuition that he gives to us, or it's just a sign, a signal that he's showing us. But oftentimes we just doubt ourselves and believe that someone else is hearing from God on our behalf. And this dependency, yes, will cause us to miss the message, the warning, the instruction that God Himself is trying to give to us. So I now tell you of my own experiences with the audible voice of God. It was in the twilight hours of May 24, 2002. I was here in Jamaica at my house. I was alone, actually relaxing and doing really nothing. I would say probably twilight dreaming. It was a really difficult time in the family, financially and otherwise. And one of my brother, he has gotten through to travel to the US. Yes, he was to have migrated. At that time, we weren't friends. He was a very tricky person, and we were at loggerheads. Yeah. And so I wasn't paying much mind or attention to him. I know he didn't have the finances to purchase his ticket, which would have allowed him to travel. I was, so mad with him that I decided that no, I am not gonna help him with the finances. I was determined in my mind that I would not give him the funds that he needed. You see, I made quite some sacrifices and was trying to, for the nth time, to build up a what we'd call an emergency fund. And so I wasn't listening to him at all. Not that he had asked me for assistance, because we were not friends. No, sir, he was my brother, but he was a very tricky brother. And he would have borrowed and he would not have repaid. And from time to time I would have given, but this time I decided no more. In this twilight dream, I heard a voice, neither male nor female, just a voice saying, $20,000 can't keep the setup. The setup is a customary practice in Jamaica and maybe other countries where the family of the deceased would have a meal and a final celebration. Deceased person. So, 20,000 Jamaican dollars is not much, because even today the rate of exchange to the US dollar is about 150 Jamaican. So the message that the voice brought to me was a warning message. It was saying to me, the $20,000 that you have sitting there for your emergency fund, that can't even keep the setup if your brother should die. So give it up. So I should purchase a ticket for my brother. In other words, if my brother did not travel immediately, he would die. The enemy would have got him. All right. I sat upright and, of course, mentally surveyed or searched the room, my environment, for the person who spoke. But there was no one. There was no one. I was alone. I lie back down, and again, in a short time afterwards, the voice spoke again. It was the same message. That money you have sitting there can't keep the setup. This time I knew that it was God. I knew that it was the voice of giving me a warning, an insight into the happenings of the now. So, without hesitation, I called my brother and I told him, come to my house. Just collect your passport and a change of clothes. So as I said, the money I had was 20,000 Jamaican dollars. When I called the airline to book the one-way ticket to go to the US, it cost 19,500 and some change. Just enough change that was left where you could have gotten a cup of coffee or something to drink at the airport. So I booked him on the first flight out the following morning. I heard the voice of God on the 24th in the evening hours, after 6, just before the nightfall. I booked him for the first flight out the following morning. That flight was leaving Jamaica at 5 minutes to 7 o'clock, 6:55 in the a.m. So he was on that flight. So as I said, I instructed him to move in silence, not saying any goodbyes. He obeyed and he traveled on the first flight out to his destination. his life was spared. I know that God speaks audibly at times, giving us instructions or a warning. My friends, that's my little story. That's my little rap. Yes, I hope you understand better now the voice of God, and that you'll be able to listen to it, and to recognize it. I hope that I will be able to recognize it in the future. My friends, my name is Joan. I am in Jamaica, sending you all the love. Stay on your path. Be blessed.